This is the Exposure Compensation Photography Podcast, hosted by Brandon.
Actually, can I be the Kanye of photography?
Kemper.
Bunnies are not that heavy. Have you ever held a bunny before?
Paid.
I think when you are referring to micro themes, you're pretty much just calling a series something else.
And Toby.
Oh, I'm pretty sure people could rip my photos apart like super easy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Exposure Compensation Photography Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about trends in photography. So just a little news, Kemper and Toby have a gallery in Colorado Springs. So I was just going to kind of start with a random question of what are some things, especially Peyton, you can pitch into, but that Kemper and Toby that you kind of like and dislike about gallery photography?
Well, like one thing that kind of gets to me is there's a bunch of galleries like in Estes Park and different places, like all over the Colorado Rockies. There's lots of photo art galleries. One of the things that kind of gets to me is the, I don't know, like really good photos that aren't printed well or like are printed on canvas and they just lose all of their detail and stuff. That's like the canvas printing thing seems to be a trend that's slowly dying, and I am happy to see it die.
It needs to die.
Yeah, it does seem like canvas is kind of going the way of the dodo. Yeah, it's not. There's something about it that's kind of cool, but you lose so much detail in those canvas prints. So yeah, I don't care for it.
Like people just did the canvas printing because it could hide low resolution files. I have a canvas print in my apartment of Dallas Divide down in the San Juans. And like, you can't really pick out any like it looks like a painting almost.
And it also has it looks like they added too much clarity. Like half the time you see a canvas printed photo, it either looks like way grainy or just like they pushed the clarity up more than they should have. And that's one of my critiques of the canvas print.
Right, to compensate for the lack of detail.
I think it's something that came from like printing just paintings. They're always on canvas or like board, but paintings on canvas are like highly valued. And I think photographers thought, oh, if I put it on canvas, it'll be more valued than if I put it on paper.
Yeah, that's fair because it's kind of following the tradition.
They forget that canvas has a texture and that paint is super thick and viscous, where ink is not.
Right, no joke.
Yeah, and I don't know, like that's just like kind of one of the trends, but I guess the trend that I like in galleries right now is really big landscape triptychs. I really dig those. Like they can be like the size of a wall and still like super tack sharp. We're like working on getting a few of those into our gallery, and they're really changing the space and just making it so much nicer to have just that massive stuff.
Right. And that is definitely the galleries that seem more successful to me is big, a focus on big stuff. So there's less obviously in the gallery, but everything that's in there is really high quality and really big and impressive and really takes you to that location. I think for years and in the more touristy galleries, there's a lot of little stuff because I think for a long time, that's kind of what people wanted was smaller stuff. But I think like as TVs, I think the TVs have been the bridge to bigger art in houses because as TVs have grown, people have gotten more accustomed to seeing things larger. And so they want larger photographs and larger pieces of art in their house that are more focal points rather than like covering a wall and a bunch of small stuff. They want one big focal point in a room. And so that opens up the opportunity to have very large photo prints and triptychs and all this cool stuff. And people are eating that up. The people who've come in, they're like the big ones are like, yeah, that's what I want. I'm going home and measuring my wall because like I want to know if I can fit something like that in my house.
Well, and it's a statement piece. If you get something like that, it's like it's there. And with the high resolution cameras now too, like there's no need to not. You can print such detail on those.
Right. And you can squeeze a lot of detail even out of older files, as long as you kind of work with them a little bit. And the thing is that like that's something that's changed recently in photo galleries, is that there are photo galleries where you go in and there are big prints, but they're not very sharp, just because they were done with a 12 megapixel D3S or whatever, or however many pixels that was. I think it was 12. They just literally, that was the roof of how much you could print. And, back then 16 megapixels seemed like a pipe dream. And now like 16 megapixels is like hard for me to work with.
Just a random question. When we were in Aspen and we went to Peter Lick's gallery, what does he shoot with? Because all of his
he shoots film. He shoots film. Yeah. Does he shoot medium format film or is he full format, Toby? I don't even know.
I think he does a mixture of both medium and full format. And to be honest with you, some of his photos looked so good. Like he had on one of the walls, like this massive panorama of this Aspen scene that like looked like you could just walk into it. I think it had, it wasn't Lumichrome, but it had acrylic over the top of like a really sharp print. And like one of my favorite pieces I've seen, and I don't love a lot of Peter Lick's stuff, but like that was fantastic. But then like not far away from that at all, there was this big shot of the maroon bells, and it did not look sharp to me. Like it didn't do the same thing. And I think that one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of galleries is this inconsistency in the quality of the prints.
Oh yeah.
That will make anything that's not printed as sharp as the sharpest thing in the gallery just look like garbage, when maybe it actually isn't. Like if I had just seen that print on its own, I wouldn't have noticed that it didn't look that sharp, or it didn't look as like a high resolution file. But when you could see it next to that fantastic Aspen print and you turn around and here's this mountain that looks kind of fuzzy, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm really noticing that now.
Yeah. Not to rag too much on that Peter Lick gallery, like as much as like Peter Lick, like I don't know quite what to do with him. Like there's been questions about, whether he's forthcoming in like everything that he does. Like there was that moon photo controversy last year, and I don't even know that people know totally what he shoots with or how he does things. He doesn't break it down. But that gallery is really nice. It's a nice experience, and it really speaks to that you go in and there's not small photos. There's only big. And there's another gallery up in Aspen that way. There's a gallery in Breckenridge, Colorado that way. There's a gallery in Telluride, Colorado that way.
Oh, and then Tetons in Jackson Hole.
Oh, yeah. That's the Magnuson.
Love that gallery. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that one's really solid. He does a little bit more a mix of sizes, which I think is good. I think that's fine to do. I just think it's interesting. It is definitely a trend that people want big, and not big in what photographers think is big. What I think is hilarious is of people thinking that like a 20 by 30 is a big print. That is not a big print in 2019 anymore.
20 by 30 triptych.
Right. Yeah. 20 by 30 triptych. Yeah. There you go. Now you're in the area of big prints. Like it's a total different animal now, how big people want. There's a single Lumichrome print in a gallery in Breckenridge that it has to be over 100 inches wide, easy, way over 120 inches wide by maybe 60. And it's a single print. It's not even a triptych. And it's done with Lumichrome, which is this acrylic process. It's actually a really interesting thing. It's only done by one printer in the United States in Nevada, I believe, Las Vegas, Nevada. And the Lumichrome, essentially how it works is it's printed on a transparent, I think it's a fiber, almost like a cloth fiber type thing, but it's transparent. So, and then it sits on a white backing. So when light shines on it, it looks backlit. I've never seen a print look like a screen. Like it's almost the experience of looking at it like on your editing screen.
What's the price on something like that?
So those Lumichrome, honestly, for what you're getting, it's not outrageous. Like I'm not going to get into like how much we would charge and how much it would cost us, just because like, industry secrets. You can go find out if you really want, but the encased acrylic is what really, really gets expensive, even to have manufactured. It's expensive to buy for the customer because it's expensive to make.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just remember when we were at the Peter Lik Gallery, that one black and white photo, it was in, I don't know if it was Paris or New York or something, but it was black and white towards the back, kind of. That one was just so crisp. And however they printed that one, that was just incredible. Like that one, I felt like I could dive into it.
Yeah, that was an amazing one.
One thing that's interesting to me is what people seem to really like is metal prints still seem to be like a non-photographer. People who just come in get like super hyped about the metal prints we have. And we don't even have that many right now. We're doing a lot of hand-mounted paper prints. But people still they really enjoy metal prints, which is, I think they're super cool. And they do a similar thing to paper prints and retaining that detail.
Right.
I just feel like they're kind of expensive for what you can get just with a paper print. But if people like it, I mean, we'll take care of them.
Right.
I like metal prints. Like they're not my favorite print, but on the spectrum of like canvas to like acrylic or something, like they're closer to acrylic.
I think metal prints have to be certain photos. You can't not. No. Also, when it comes to size, you still need a variety of size because not everybody has 12-foot vaulted ceilings to hang 40 by 60 triptychs in their house. I watch like MCAD's yearly art sale, like how much of the work moves, and usually the biggest pieces go to the people wearing like full Gucci, and they're like, yeah, I have wall space for this because their house is like 6,000 square feet.
Well, I mean, part of the reason why you'd have massive pieces in your gallery, though, is to be impressed. Like, I think one trend that I like the way things are moving is to like have a big, impressive piece that you can then be like, hey, we can print this in any size. Like if you want this in 15 by 28 or something really small like that, like we can do that for you and we'll hook you up. Like,
well,
that's totally fine.
I just think interior design is just changing in general. I think even people in smaller houses, they just want to hang less things up and hang what they are hanging is bigger. And it also makes their place seem more, I don't know, bougie, like you were saying. I think it's kind of shifting to where people like focal points. And it's relative. Maybe a big piece in a standard house is not like, what I was saying with a big triptych. Not everyone's going to want that, but people may aspire to it and people may put it in a house. Maybe it doesn't fit just because they want a big focal point. They want that one piece that kind of pulls everything together. I think in the minimalism in design is meaning that art is getting bigger, but there's less of it. I just think that's kind of what people are going to. And I work with another painting gallery here in the Springs, and all he sells is the big pieces. Like he actually likes painting smaller. He does kind of Native American, Western art, horses, buffalo, stuff like that. And like, I think he enjoys painting smaller, but all people want to buy are big stuff like 40 by 50s, 30 by 60 canvases. And he's kind of moving to a gallery up in Sun Valley. And I was just talking to him the other day and he was saying, yeah, all he's selling is the big stuff. Like he keeps sending little pieces and they're not moving. So I think it's just an indicator of the trend is that people want one big piece in their house and they want it to be really impressive and a focal point. But like, not to discount that some people are going to want smaller stuff. And I think we still need to offer it. I just think the galleries, they used to be, and they still are in some places where you walk in and it's just walls covered in 8 by 10s, 11 by 14s, maybe some 24 by 30s, maybe some. but they're just covered in them. And then, they're like, oh, this is the sizes people want. And it's the sizes they used to be able to print because, really we're in this world of being able to print as big as we can. Gosh, and maybe 5 years, maybe.
No, that's totally right. Yeah. Like, especially with some of the panoramas, like, especially what you do, but even when we come with, like, I have some panoramas that are 200 to 500 megapixels, which is a lot.
Right.
So to move on, we're going to try to cover a couple different areas of photography in this podcast. And this is a little bit more my area, but what are some trends in like portrait fashion photography that you guys either really like or that kind of drive you nuts?
Well, a trend I don't know that I like or dislike it. I probably more like than dislike is the wide open look. Like all portraits right now are wide open, like 1.4, 1.8, 2.8 at 200 bare minimum. So I would say that's a real 2015 and later look.
Yeah, I never do that.
Oh man, yeah, you can just go to Brandon's account and look at all of his f5.6 portraits if you want to take a look at that.
Most of them are actually f8.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
F11 every once in a while.
Yeah. Only when I'm shooting at like 20.
Dog, I only use F22.
He's lying.
F64. I'm back to the Ansel Adams.
I need everything sharp.
Fashion photography, like traditionally, it's kind of known for the entire subject being sharp because you wanted to show off the garment or whatever. So like most of them are at 5.6 traditionally.
Well, like especially studio. Yeah, you're right.
Right. In studio and stuff, like definitely. But like, I don't know. I think that's shifting. I think social media is kind of shifting it. I think it's all over the place now. Fashion photography now is defined more as like, I don't know, less emphasis. I don't even know how to define it now. It seems like it and portrait photography are kind of merging rapidly.
It's about ambiance now, I think, is part of it. You get like, you'll sell more outfits or you'll sell the look if the look looks good in the situation. If you put a certain ambiance to it, like if you're trying to sell a bikini, let's say, you're not going to sell a bikini if you have a flat white studio background. You're going to sell a bikini if it's on the beach and you make it look dreamy. Like that's just kind of the reality of the marketing behind it anyways.
Or like, I guess like mountain brands are posting more and more photos of like their equipment in the field and stuff like that, which would kind of like fit the ambiance of how you'd use their stuff. Like even in their catalogs and on their websites and stuff. Like if you go to Arc'teryx's website, it's literally just like a cool photo gallery of people doing cool stuff.
Well, it gets them excited.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, I mean, and it gets me excited every time I go to Arc'teryx. I should never go there.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. You're going to be like, oh man, we need to go climb the diamond in like 3 months.
Like actually though, that's like, even when you're like very aware of the scenario, you totally fall into it still.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair though.
What about you? I mean, you're more in that culture and community. What are you noticing? Like that's kind of new in like the last 6 months or so.
I don't know if I would say last 6 months, but definitely colors have become the biggest thing. Like people overdo them all the time. You almost get like, the thing that annoys me in landscape photography is that kind of crappy HDR overcolored look. And some people do the same thing with portrait photography or fashion photography. But just in general, whether in a good way or a bad way, colors have just gone way over the top in like both in a good and a bad way. Like I feel way better about my colors now than I did like a year ago. So that's one thing. The other thing, the thing that actually really bothers me about portrait, not as much in like fashion. Well, no, in fashion too, is there seems to be this criteria and then everybody copies the same exact look for everything. So it's like somebody puts, I don't know, one thing that's going on in Minnesota is everybody's trying to do this candy look where they like have candy, like a up close portrait of somebody's face with candy all around. And it's just, I want to do a candy shot, but it's not going to look anything like what people are doing, but everybody's copying that same exact look.
That's interesting. I don't know, like, if you think that's literally just a Minnesota thing, or is it like...
No, it's definitely more nationwide, but I'm especially noticing it with just a lot of Minnesota photographers. And there aren't like hundreds and hundreds of Minnesota photographers in the sense that I'm thinking, but it's definitely just something that I'm seeing all over the place. But I guess even to elaborate on that a teeny bit more, it seems like, and this is more with like Instagram photographers, but it's just the basically this concept where make the photo look cool and have a wow factor to it, but don't necessarily have it look professional. And that's something I've always been kind of against. Like I like the wow factor, obviously, and I do incorporate a lot of ideas, but it's just this, a lot of people seem to just, they'll like add a ton of color, they'll like add all these like special kind of wow factors, but the photo itself won't look professional. It's not something any company would ever want to hang up. It's not something you'd put in an actual like model's portfolio. And that's something that also just kind of drives me crazy. Or it's just like, oh, cool, that's interesting. And maybe it has some inspiration to it for like an actual idea, but not an actual like final product, in my opinion.
I guess what's like a trend in any kind of photography or just anything within the photo world that just like kind of drives, like what's your least favorite trend?
Actually, was just thinking of a trend that I kind of like in landscape photography. I feel like for a long time, landscape photography has been the realm of old men, retired people, retired dentists and lawyers who have time and money and want to just go out and, you know, take landscape pictures because it's fun, which it is fun. Right. Exactly. But what I've noticed in the last few years is that like landscape photography is getting younger and it's getting a lot more energy and cool things are happening with it. And like we've noticed that with people coming in our gallery, not to just talk about our gallery over and over, but like older guys are coming in and they're being like, I don't even know how these were taken. Like, what is even going on with these photos? And it's just, it's no longer just an old man's game. It's a young man and old man still, of course, and woman. I don't know if old women take landscape shots, but definitely young women are, which is really cool. That it's like becoming multi-gendered. And like there's this one, I will hunt down her Instagram. Actually, she's not even on Instagram. I found her website and she just takes incredible stuff. She lives in the southwest corner of Colorado. So I'll try to get that link to Toby for the show notes. But I'm really excited about that energy and that creativity that's coming, that it's like, it's not stagnant. It's not where it was. And like, you know, new possibilities are being found with landscape photography. So, you know, that gets me jazzed because that's where my head's at. Like I'm wanting to be creative and new and have my own mark on it. So yeah.
We also live kind of in an era, like transcending all photography pretty much, of like the celebrity photographer to a degree. Like photographers are, like some photographers are kind of famous now, which is interesting.
Yeah. Chris Picard, Peter McKinnon, although Peter McKinnon, he does landscape sort of, but Chris Picard, and then of course the Jimmy Chin.
Oh yeah,
everyone's favorite.
Infamous.
Oh yeah.
No, literally my favorite. I'm not joking, not being sarcastic. I love Jimmy Chin.
Oh man, Jimmy Chin is amazing. Every time that he posts a photo, I'm like, dang it.
I know.
He's good. What is this guy doing? Oh man. But yeah, it is actually really interesting to see how much Kemper was talking about, how like people are coming into our gallery and like they don't know what we're doing, like how the photos exist. And I think there's kind of a weird trend, particularly that kind of came with digital photography, like kind of a recent trend that's maybe fading off now that I really like, where people have this attitude about photography where they're like, oh, well, anyone could do it if I only had the right gear to do it. And it's like, no, like the gear is a huge chunk of how stuff happens, but there's even knowledge that has to come with knowing what gear you need to have. And like, just seeing people not be able to figure out what's happening is really interesting.
I put less emphasis on the gear. The gear is important, and there was definitely a shift when I upgraded from the A7 to the A7R Mark III, and then definitely a shift for lenses with the 35-1.4 and the 85-1.8 that I have. But I could definitely take better portraits. Well, this is me thinking this. Maybe I'm not actually that good, but I I think I could take as good of a portrait with like a T3i and a 50 mil as I could with my camera setup. Maybe not as reliably, maybe not quite as good of colors and stuff, and quite as good at depth, but still like competitively with myself. And even to a degree, like I feel like even us as a collective, and actually photographers, like at least good photographers as a collective, can take like better phone photos than the average person. So I don't know. That might just be in my head. I might be stroking my ego, but just the gear seems to not be as big of a thing.
Well, I think that it's a weird sort of hybrid because I think that sometimes people want to separate the photographer from the camera and the camera from the photographer. So they're like, oh man, if I had that camera, I'd be a better photographer. Or like, I'm a great photographer. I don't need great gear to go with it. And I think that what makes really great photos is when the photographer knows how to use the gear that they have and has a vision beyond the gear and can make the gear work for them.
Right.
So it's not like a T3i with a 50 mil is not going to give you the background separation that your A7R3 with. It's not that it can't take a great photo. It's just it's going to look different. And that's the thing that I think people miss when they're like, oh, the gear doesn't really matter. Well, the gear specifically affects how the photo is going to look. That doesn't mean that you can't take a great photo with any camera, though. It just means that the camera is part of the process of deciding how the photo looks. And sometimes what makes a great photographer is can you adapt to the gear that you have? Because there's limitations. I mean, right now, I have a 28-75. I don't have a 24 mil. So like I have to adapt to that issue from time to time. You know, it's just it's part of the whole thing.
Well, no, and I don't disagree. I guess part of it for me is I get tired of everybody being like, wow, you must have a really nice camera as the response to a good photo, which every photographer pretty much realizes.
Right. Yeah. Every photographer has to deal with that. Like, oh my goodness, you have the coolest camera. And I mean, I guess that's fine. Although I think, honestly, I've noticed it less. I can't quite put my finger on why. But I've definitely noticed it less, like in the last year, 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that people are starting to figure out that it doesn't taking a great photo. There's so much like gear's just like one little piece of like what really is a way more complex thing. Like there's you, the photographer, who decides and has the skill and the tenacity to, like, for a landscape photographer to get to some of these locations that we get to at the times that we get there. Like it's a lot of work and effort to do that. And not everybody's willing to pull that off. And like with Brandon's portrait photography, like before we even start taking the photo, like it's the project of like finding the model and organizing that photo shoot and then interacting, you know, in that environment. And that's not something that just anyone can just pick up and start doing, you know?
Right.
And I think people are starting to pick up on that a little bit more, that there's real value in the photographer themselves. And it's not just the equipment. And I think that is starting to shift, and that's a good trend.
No, yeah, I think you are right to a degree. I get it a lot, but I also am in a situation where I probably should get it a lot, kind of.
Right.
But I think enough people have actually probably bought in cameras. Like they went out and got like an A6000 A6000, sorry, or like a Nikon 70-200 or something. And they just didn't get the quality of images they thought they could. They were like, why would I pay Brandon $200 an hour to go take my photos when I could just buy a camera and do it for like $400 or whatever, $500. And then they realize, oh, well, this $500 camera didn't just automatically take the photo, and it didn't edit it, and it didn't retouch it. And
it didn't have the eye, I think. And I think, you know, honestly, it's on the photographer a little bit to convey something that I think like with whatever photo you're doing, if it's an artistic photo, I guess there are practical photos, but like even wedding photography for sure. And like anything kind of that, and then more artistic, clear to landscape, is that I think it's the photographer's responsibility to convey a vision and like what are you seeing that's unique, and then what do you want the viewer to see that's unique. You want to take the viewer to a place And so, like with my landscape photography, definitely my goal is to kind of provide a window to whatever environment I'm taking a picture of or whatever my subject is. And I think if you can do that successfully, and I'm not saying I do it successfully all the time, I don't. But if you do that successfully, people are less interested in the fact that it's a photo and they're more interested in what the photo's of. And if you can evoke that emotional response, then like all that stuff goes away. People aren't concerned about that you had an amazing camera, because it's not an amazing photo, it's an amazing place. And there's an old saying, I don't know who coined it with wedding photography, is that you don't want people to look at your photos and say, wow, what a beautiful photo. You want them to say, wow, what a beautiful bride. And I think that like the truly good and gifted photographers are the people who can get past that initial reaction of, oh, that's a great photo, to, wow, what a beautiful spot, or, oh, I want to go there, or, oh, that is just, I want that in my house. I want to look at that every day, because it's about what the photo's of. And like, that's an artistic, that's a subjective, and that's an emotional thing. And I think a lot of photographers leave, certainly landscape photographers, they check their emotions at their door. They're so busy with fiddling with filters and like doing the technical thing and making sure there's leading lines that they don't have time to have an emotion about what they're taking a picture of. And if you don't, no one's going to get past it. Like, no one's going to get past the fact that maybe it's a technically great photograph, or maybe it's interesting. Like that's a response a lot of people have about photography, is like, oh, that's interesting. But
it's also
like,
just sad for them too. They they probably at the location, they probably didn't enjoy it. Like,
right.
One of the best trips we've had is when we went to Lone Eagle, and we were just sitting there chilling at the lake. We had kind of taken our shots. We took some more later, but we were just chilling kind of just at the edge of the lake, and it was so pretty. And we were just sitting there goofing around. Like, we were in this amazing place. It felt a little bit like a fairy tale. And if you're not able to have that moment too, the photographs are important. I'm not one of those people to ever be like, oh, don't take photos because.
And that's something I always, always, always do, is when, especially if it's like a planned shot or like, a really spectacular place, is like, I take a second and I actually look. Like, sometimes you're in a hurry because the light's doing something, or it feels like I'm always running up a hill to get to the light. But I do always take a moment and actually look at it with my eyes and connect with it, because it's when you're there and, you feel the wind, you feel the cold, you feel the everything else. And if you start feeling it, your memory is going to translate into the photo. It's going to translate into the edit. That emotion is going to be real, and it's communicatable. It is. People feel it. Like just recently, like you were talking about Lone Eagle, which is absolutely true. Like the first time I was at Lone Eagle, I was so awestruck with it that I barely took photos. It took me a minute to even take photos of it. And like just recently we did a winter maroon bells shoot. Actually, you guys were along for that one too. But like, I just wanted to just look at them for a while too, because it was just so cool to be there. And what's cool is that one of those photos is one of the ones that we printed into a triptych that's in the gallery now. And I look at it most every day. But when I'm looking at it, I can feel that memory and that emotion. And like, I honestly feel like, maybe they don't have the specific memory, a viewer doesn't, but I do think that they probably can feel that this photographer had an emotional connection to this place. At least I hope so. Like, I don't know, maybe it's delusional, but.
No, I totally agree. Even when I look, like you sent one of the photos a little bit back, but I looked at it and I could almost smell it, like just the crisp air. 'Cause it was like, there's fresh snow everywhere, like feet of it. And then like even the color of the skies and everything, the lighting was just so amazing. But no, I totally agree with you. And even like with portrait photography, like it's maybe a teeny bit different, but portrait and fashion photography, if you just take a picture of a person, there's nothing that's like, yeah, people like that you blew out the background. People will like that it's a pretty model or whatever. But like I've noticed you get so much more interaction when it is when it's themed of some kind. So if you do like a kind of vintage diner shoot, and then you do fun hair, or if you do like a beach shoot, but you don't just do like a beach shoot in like a bikini. Like if you do something where it's like a nautical theme or like lifeguard themed or something that has some sort of like memory attached for people. Like especially like people just remember when they were like a kid and their parents brought them to like a fun diner, or just like they saw it in a movie and they love that movie or something. Like that's what you really hook people with. It's not just it's not just a pretty person, a pretty mountain, like pretty product or something. Like it's about more of that, like a thematic something. I don't know.
Either I guess it's just a trend in landscape photography that bothers me sometimes is people walk into a place and they set up their tripod and they just take like the one photo, like the one angle with like a 16-35, like we already mentioned. And I think one of the beautiful things about photography is like there's a saying some photographers use. It's like they're working the location. And I love how photography, and I'm sure it's like this way with interacting with like a person too, and like in like portrait photography and all the different kinds, where it's like you get to work with the location and it's like a way to interact with it and find the angle that you want. So it's like you pay closer attention even when the camera is still in your backpack. You're paying closer attention to the environment. And I just love that. Personally, for me, that part of photography of just paying closer attention to the details in an environment and where you are. And that definitely does translate to taking better photos because you're paying, like you see things you wouldn't always see. And it drives you to go out and enjoy an environment and to make connections with people and all that too. But
just kind of more along those lines, it's one of the reasons that I like going back to a place. It's like, to me, it's like relationship building, honestly, which sounds bizarre, but it is. I have locations that I go back to over and over and over, and I experience it in different times of day, in different weather, different parts of the year. And like over time, I just feel like I can kind of hone in on the real true personality of a place when you kind of experienced it in a lot of different times and ways. It's I am definitely not of the philosophy of you go, you get the shot and then you've got it. Like if I go and I like a photograph I've taken there at all, chances are I'm going there like 6 more times. Like it drives people who are with me crazy. I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about going there. And they're like, oh, back there. Really? Oh,
well, yeah, that happened to me for sure. I was like, when you said Maroon Bells, when we came in the winter and we'd just gone in there in the fall, I was kind of like, can't we try something different? But I'm actually so happy we went back because it was just so amazing. Like even just being there minus the photos, and I got some really cool photos, but.
Right.
Yeah. I think that with like the going back thing, I think that sometimes people with like landscapes, they get this idea in their head where it's like you go to a place and you've experienced it, but every single day at a location is different than any other. Like any moment's different and all the seasons are like totally different, like the experience.
Oh man. Yeah.
But there's still like a personality to the place, which is so epic and cool. So like, honestly, I think that with all things in photography, like you can move yourself to like a better place. Like if you like, I know Brandon's done shoots with like the same person multiple times for like portrait photography and stuff like that. And it seems like sometimes his best stuff, in my opinion anyway, happens after a few shoots with like the same person. And I think the same thing can apply with locations as well.
Oh, definitely.
And you just appreciate, and like Kemper said, you build a relationship. And I definitely understand what he means by that. I don't know if everybody would, but it's just kind of like you understand a place and you get vision for like ideas and photos you'd like to take, but you also get surprised by the location every time that it throws you something completely different.
Well, and I hate to constantly compare like people and places because they are so different, but at the same time, like going or working with a model, like you're always going to, or like you're building a connection, you're figuring out how they work. You like see like what you can do and they can do, and they like do it to you too, to figure out a way to like kind of get the photo or get the shot, and you just like learn more and more. But the same thing, maybe it's more of a one-way street with a landscape. But like if we go to like Lone Eagle again or something, or Maroon Bells again or something like that, like you've learned about the location, you know it, you've felt it a couple times, and you can kind of understand, you can know when the light's going to hit right, and like all these things that like are not quantifiable, and it just leads to you being able to work with it so much better.
Yeah, I think just like you're never going to actually like be content, especially with landscape photos, just like going out and only taking them once that one morning, because there's like, how many times did we shoot Chasm Lake alone? I feel like I've been there like 8 times, and it's like every time it's been different. Every time it's been for sunrise. Some people are like, is this midday? Some people are like, wow, this is sunrise. It's just like, it doesn't even work. Or like when I came out skiing, was it 3 years ago now? And we went to Dream Lake, and we got those like incredible shots of just like the wind being blown across all the ice. And then like later, all those shots of like the clouds like going through the mountains. I think it was Longs. And then we went there the next year with Brandon, and we're all standing there like, should we come back in 2 hours? Because it wasn't that big of a hike. And the whole peak for in front of the Dream Lake was just covered.
I'm so mad about that still. I was so sick too. I was throwing up from like food poisoning or whatever it was for like 2 days. And then I was like,
okay, and that was a rough trip.
I'm going to tough it out. And we woke up at like 1 a.m. or whatever to drive 3 hours up there. And then we get there for sunrise. We have perfect, like everything went to plan except for the weather. And the weather just destroyed us. And I think you got a shot, didn't you, Kemper? But like, I don't know.
I did. I actually got a shot I'm really happy with, but it was like I kind of found it and then I just kind of waited, and it really was just like if you hadn't have been, and it's because I had, like, here we go. This is proving my point. It's because I'd been there before and I kind of knew what it might do. If I hadn't have been there before, there's no way I would have gotten it because like it wouldn't have happened. And actually, we'll link that shot in the show notes because it's a really interesting of Hallett Peak kind of poking through the clouds. But like, yeah, I would never have gotten it if I didn't know, first off, where Hallett Peak was, because as far as we were concerned, it was just white wall in front of us. And I just kind of waited for it to kind of show just a little and got it.
Then my foot went through the ice too on the lake.
That was so fun. Oh man, that was a rough day. That was a cold, rough day. But yeah. So we should probably wrap, eh?
Yeah, I think we're unfortunately out of time today. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast if you're new on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app.
And also give us a rating too. I mean, as long as you like us. I mean, if you don't, then don't rate it, please.
Keep it yourself.
Yeah.
If you like it at all, please give us a rating because we're trying to build traction. And that's like the number one way that you build traction is ratings on iTunes. So
yeah, that would be awesome. If you could do that for us. Do you guys want to say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Super awkward.